Hello, my name is Jonathan Pierce, but everyone usually calls me John. I'm 39 years old, and if you ask me what I do, I'd probably give a wry smile and say, I'm trying to survive the storms my own family has stirred up. The story I'm about to tell isn't a fairy tale, nor is it a Hollywood movie with a guaranteed happy ending. It's my life, a messy tangle of love, betrayal, and wounds that never heal. Sit down because I'm about to take you into my world where supermarkets aren't just places to shop, but battlegrounds of families, ambitions, and broken hearts. I grew up in a lavish mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, where even the air seemed to carry the scent of money. The Pierce family, my family, was a symbol of wealth and power. My father, Gregory Pierce, was the chairman and CEO of Pierce Retail Group, a high-end supermarket empire spanning across America. If you've ever stepped into a Pierce store, you'd see shelves gleaming under soft lighting, stocked with bottles of Bordeaux wine, boxes of cheese from Provence, and organic strawberries flown in from South America. Everything was perfect. From the way the light hit the artisanal jam jars to the meticulously trained smiles of the staff, that was my father's world, a world where everything had to be exquisite. I was the eldest son destined to inherit this empire. From a young age, I was taught that the Pierce name wasn't just a name, it was a legacy. My father would sit at the head of the dining table in our opulent dining room lined with oil paintings, and recount how my grandfather built the company from a single store in Manhattan. John, he'd say, his voice low and sharp as a blade. You are the future of Pierce Retail. Don't let me down. I'd nod. Though deep down, I didn't understand why a 10-year-old boy needed to carry the weight of an entire family's legacy. Our household wasn't just a family. It was more like a dynasty. My mother, Isabel, always appeared in silk dresses and pearl necklaces, but her eyes often seemed distant, as if she were living in a place she didn't want to be part of. My younger brother, Christopher, for years my junior, was a carbon copy of my father. Always knowing how to please him, always knowing when to flash the right smile. And me, I was the one who asked questions, the one who felt suffocated at dinner parties where guests only talked about stocks, real estate, and European vacations. But my life truly changed when I met Sophie. She was a light in my dark world. And also the spark that ignited every tragedy that followed. I met Sophie Bennett during my sophomore year at Stanford University. It was a crisp autumn afternoon with golden leaves falling across the campus paths. I was sitting in the library, buried in an economics textbook when she walked in, bringing with her a fresh breeze and the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Sophie was unlike any girl I'd ever met. She wore a simple sweater, her hair tied up in a high ponytail, and her brown eyes sparkled as if they held an untold story. She sat down at the table across from me, placed a stack of books on the table, and accidentally dropped a pen. I picked it up, handed it back to her, and when our hands touched, I felt a jolt of electricity run through me. Thank you, she said, flashing a smile that made me forget where I was. I'm Sophie Bennett. John Pierce, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite my heart pounding like a drum. We started talking, and I quickly realized Sophie wasn't the type to show off. She was intelligent, sharp, but had a sincerity that made me feel I could shed the armor I'd worn for years. She talked about her family, about her father, Henry Bennett, the founder of Bennett Market, a chain of budget supermarkets serving working-class people in low-income communities. My dad always says, Sophie laughed, everyone deserves to eat well, not just the wealthy. I chuckled, but a twinge of unease stirred within me. Bennett Market. That name was no stranger to me. It was the sworn enemy of Pierce Retail Group. The Bennetts and the Pierces were like two sides of the same coin. Coexisting in the retail industry, but as different as night and day. Pierce Retail Group prided itself on being the brand of the elite, where customers would pay hundreds of dollars for a bottle of Italian olive oil simply because it came in a handcrafted glass bottle. My father often referred to Bennett Market as those cheap supermarkets, with a tone of disdain. My father had once said in a shareholders' meeting when I was 16 and allowed to sit in, "They sell to people who don't know quality. They tarnish the retail industry." But Bennett Market saw things differently. Henry Bennett had built his company from a small store in Portland, Oregon, with the mission of bringing quality food to every American household, regardless of income. Their marketing campaigns targeted workers, single mothers, and struggling neighborhoods. They even had a free meals program on weekends for children in underserved areas. My father called it cheap PR stunts to win the masses. But I, though I never dared say it aloud, thought it was something Pierce Retail could never achieve, making a real difference in the community. The rivalry between the two families wasn't just talk. It was a full-blown war. Pierce Retail and Bennett Market had sued each other over an advertising campaign my father claimed the Bennetts had stolen from us. They fought over prime real estate in major cities like Chicago, Dallas, and Miami. Once at an industry conference, my father and Henry Bennett nearly came to blows over a comment about the true value of food. My brother Christopher jokingly called it the war of the vegetable vendors. But to me, it felt like a tragic comedy where both sides were too consumed by their egos to see the harm they were causing to their loved ones. Sophie and I fell in love despite all the barriers. Our date nights weren't at fancy restaurants or luxury resorts. We preferred sitting in a small diner in Palo Alto eating burgers and laughing about economics exams. Sophie always carried a notebook where she jotted down ideas for improving food supply chains. If we could deliver fresh produce within 24 hours at a low cost, she'd say, her eyes shining, people wouldn't have to choose between quality and their budget. I loved her passion, the way she saw the world not through the lens of wealth, but through simple values. But I knew our love was a ticking time bomb. My father would never accept Sophie, not just because she was Henry Bennett's daughter, but because she represented everything he despised. The storm hit one winter evening when I brought Sophie home to meet my family. I braced myself, but I didn't expect things to go as badly as they did. The Pierce mansion was aglow with lights. The dining table set like a royal banquet. My mother smiled stiffly. Christopher sat with his arms crossed and a scowl. And my father, he looked at Sophie as if she were an intruder. "Mom. Dad. This is Sophie Bennett," I introduced, trying to keep my voice calm. "She's studying with me at Stanford." Silence. A heavy silence so thick I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Then my father spoke, his voice cold as ice. "Bennett. Henry Bennett's daughter. The one ruining the retail industry." Sophie gripped my hand under the table, but she didn't back down. "Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice clear and steady. "My father built Bennett Market to help people, not to ruin anyone." My father gave a mocking laugh that sent a chill down my spine. "Help people? You think selling cheap goods to the poor is helping them? You're tarnishing this family's name. And John, you're disappointing me." That evening ended in a horrific argument. My father stood up, pointed at me, and shouted, "If you choose this girl, you're no longer my son." Christopher sat silently, but I saw the corner of his mouth curl as if he were enjoying the drama. My mother just bowed her head, her hands clutching her napkin. I walked Sophie to her car, apologizing for everything. But she just shook her head, hugged me, and said, "John, I don't need your family to accept me. I just need you." The weeks that followed were even worse. My father summoned me to his office at Pierce Retail's headquarters in Manhattan. The room was vast with windows overlooking New York's skyline, but the atmosphere inside felt like a prison. He sat behind his desk, his eyes cold and piercing. "I've made my decision," he said. "Christopher will inherit the company. You're no longer in the plan." I stood there feeling the floor collapse beneath me. "Because of Sophie?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Because you've betrayed this family," he replied. You chose the daughter of our enemy, a girl unworthy of the Pierce name. From now on, you're on your own. I left the office, my mind reeling. I'd lost my place in the company, my father's approval, and perhaps my entire family. But when I called Sophie and heard her warm voice over the phone, I knew I'd made the right choice. She was my home, the place where I belonged. In the meantime, I visited the Bennett family in Portland, Oregon. Their home was in the suburbs, a modest wooden house with a small garden full of vegetables. Henry Bennett, Sophie's father, welcomed me like an old friend. He wore a worn-out shirt, his hands calloused from years of working in the store. "John," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You love my daughter, and that's enough. I don't care if you're Gregory Pierce's son or anyone else. You're family." I looked at him, then at Sophie standing beside him, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly accepted. But deep down, I knew the war between the Pierces and the Bennetts wasn't just about business. It was personal. And I was standing on the dividing line. I didn't join Bennett Market despite Henry offering me a position multiple times. "You have talent. You could help us bring good food to more people," he said during one of my visits. But I declined. I wanted to stand on my own, not be known as the son-in-law propped up by his wife's family. Or perhaps deep down, I refused because I still felt a pang of guilt. Joining Bennett Market would feel like betraying my own father. So, I chose a different path. I joined Fresh Route, a small logistics startup in Seattle focused on fresh food supply chains. My job was to figure out how to get vegetables, fruits, and fresh meat from farms to consumers within 24 hours at the lowest possible cost. It was grueling work with long days and late nights crunching data. But I loved it. I loved creating something meaningful, working with people who didn't care whose son I was, only what I could do. Sophie and I got married on a spring afternoon about 3 years after we graduated. The wedding took place in a small church on the outskirts of Portland. There were no lavish receptions, no guests in Armani suits or glittering ball gowns. Just the Bennett family, a few close friends from Stanford, and a priest with a kind smile. Henry walked Sophie down the aisle, his eyes shining with pride and a touch of sadness. "You're my son now, John," he whispered as he hugged me after the ceremony. "Take care of her." No one from the Pierce family showed up. I had sent an invitation, though I knew they wouldn't come. My mother sent a brief text, "Wishing you happiness, John." "I'm sorry." My father said nothing. Christopher posted a photo on social media raising a glass of wine at a party in the Hamptons with the caption, "Congrats to my brother on his big day, choosing love over family." I read it, feeling a stab in my chest, but I didn't respond. Seattle, where Sophie and I settled, was a city with a mild climate, surrounded by lush nature. Our apartment overlooked Puget Sound. It wasn't as grand as the Greenwich Mansion, but it was ours. 2 years later, Olivia was born. She was a miniature version of Sophie, big brown eyes, a radiant smile, and a stubborn streak that both charmed and exasperated me. When Olivia was 3, Marcus arrived, a quiet boy with eyes just like mine. Watching our children play on the living room floor, I felt like I'd found the true meaning of life. But not everything was perfect. Despite my efforts to cut ties with the Pierces, their shadow loomed. My mother called occasionally, her voice laced with guilt. Christopher relished reminding me I'd been cast out. Life at Fresh Route wasn't always easy. Some weeks I worked 80 hours. But Sophie was always there with a hot cup of coffee and a smile. "You're doing something amazing, John," she'd say. "Every Fresh Route truck is a family eating fresh produce. Don't give up." One Sunday afternoon, we took Olivia and Marcus for a picnic in the park. Sophie lay on the blanket reading while Olivia chased a butterfly and Marcus giggled on my shoulders. "You know," she said, "sometimes I think we've found paradise." I smiled. "My paradise is you." She laughed, playfully punching my shoulder. "So cheesy, Pierce." It was a perfect moment. But a few hours later, everything shattered. Driving home as the sun set, Olivia and Marcus slept in the back seat. Sophie hummed a lullaby. Then, a blinding light. A massive container truck swerved across the center line, heading straight for us. "John, be careful!" Sophie screamed. Darkness. When I woke in the hospital, a nurse told me I was lucky. But when I asked about Sophie and the kids, she wouldn't meet my eyes. The doctor came in, voice low and compassionate. "John! I'm so sorry. The accident was severe. Your wife and 2 children, they didn't make it. The world collapsed." I heard the doctor's words, but they didn't feel real. Sophie, gone. Olivia, gone. Marcus, gone. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, you're wrong. They're fine. They have to be." The doctor placed a hand on my shoulder, but I shoved it away. "Take me to them," I demanded, trying to stand despite the searing pain in my broken arm. "Where are they?" "Sophie. Olivia. Marcus." The nurse and doctor restrained me, injecting a sedative. I collapsed, tears streaming down my face, but no sound left my throat. The days after blurred into a nightmare. I learned the truck driver had fallen asleep, lost control, and hit us head-on. He survived with only a few scratches. Henry and Linda Bennett flew from Portland the moment they heard. Linda wept, clutching my hand. "John, you're our son," she said, her voice shaking. "We lost Sophie and the kids, but we won't lose you." Henry said little, but his eyes told me everything: pain, loss, love. "What do you need, John?" he asked softly. There was only one thing I wanted: to turn back time. But time never grants such wishes. I called my mother, leaving a trembling voicemail. I hoped they'd come, if not for me, then for Sophie and the kids. But no one came. My mother called back. "John, I wanted to come, but your father, he said I shouldn't interfere with the life you chose." I gripped the phone. "Mom, my wife and your 2 grandchildren are dead," I said quietly. "Do you understand? They're dead." She sobbed but didn't come. My father didn't even call. Later I learned he was hosting Christopher's birthday party at the Greenwich mansion the same day as the funeral. The funeral was in Portland. 3 coffins. 2 so small they broke me just to look at them. Olivia still clutching her butterfly kite. Marcus looking as though he was just sleeping. And Sophie, as if she had something left to say. I sent a notice to the Pierces despite Henry's warning not to. No one came. No message. Nothing. After the funeral, I returned to our Seattle apartment. Sophie's notebook sat open on the kitchen table. Olivia's dress hung in the closet. Marcus's tiny shoes in the corner. I couldn't bring myself to move them. One evening, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my mother. "I'm sorry I couldn't come to the funeral," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't talk about him," I cut her off coldly. She stayed for a while, sitting in silence. For the first time, I saw her as someone trapped in my father's shadow. But her presence didn't dull my pain. 6 months later, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like a shadow. I wrote a short letter to my parents and Christopher. "I'm no longer part of the Pierce family. Don't contact me again." I sold my shares in Pierce Retail. Money couldn't buy back what I'd lost. What I needed was purpose. And revenge. I called Henry. "Dad," I said, using the word for the first time, "I want to join Bennett Market. I want to carry on what Sophie dreamed of." There was a pause, then Henry's voice came, thick with emotion. "Welcome home, son." I moved to Portland a week later. Henry and Linda embraced me as if I had been theirs all along. But I wasn't just there to heal. I was there to fight. My joining Bennett Market made headlines. Disowned son of Gregory Pierce joins direct competitor. Some called me a traitor. Others called me bold. I didn't care. Henry put me on the leadership team as Director of Strategic Development. Bennett Market's offices were modest, nothing like Pierce Retail's towers. But the people worked for a shared mission, not for status. I proposed a strategy inspired by Sophie's notebook. Fresh in 24 hours, distribution system, farm to store in 1 day, low cost. Henry backed me completely. "You can do this," he told me. "Sophie would be proud." I nodded, my hands tightening into fists. "I won't let you down, Dad." We launched the Eat Well Without Being Wealthy campaign, directly inspired by Sophie's notebook. We weren't just selling groceries, we were telling the stories of real families, single parents, and hard-working people who deserved fresh food without breaking the bank. The campaign exploded. Cities where Pierce retail had once been untouchable, Chicago, Miami, Dallas, were now crowded with Bennett Market customers. Middle-class shoppers who once paid premium prices for my father's stores realized they could get the same freshness for less. Articles began comparing us. Bennett Market is redefining food retail while Pierce retail is stuck in the past. Then one morning, Henry walked into my office holding a newspaper. "You need to see this," he said. The headline, "Pierce Retail Accuses Bennett Market of Copyright Infringement." My father was suing us, claiming our campaign copied one of his old marketing strategies. It was a classic Gregory Pierce move. He didn't need to win, just drag us into a costly distraction. I told our lawyers, he has no case. This campaign came from Sophie's ideas. We fight it. The lawsuit dragged on for months, but we kept growing. We opened 10 new stores in major cities, each one a blow to my father's pride. The real turning point came at a national food retail conference in Las Vegas. I was invited to speak for Bennett Market. My father was in the audience. Standing at the podium, I spoke clearly. Bennett Market isn't just about selling food. We're about bringing hope. Every family, rich or poor, deserves to eat well. The crowd applauded. I wasn't speaking to them. I was speaking to Sophie. Afterward, a reporter asked, "Mr. Pierce, is this a declaration of war against your father's company?" I smiled. "I'm not declaring war on anyone. I'm carrying out my wife Sophie Bennett's dream. If that makes us a competitor, that's their problem, not mine." Within months, Pierce retail stock tanked. Stores closed. Shareholders lost faith in Christopher's leadership. Eventually, news broke, Pierce retail files for bankruptcy protection. Henry slid the paper across my desk. "What do you think?" he asked. I set it down. "I think Pierce retail is no longer part of me. Bennett Market is my home." 2 years later, Bennett Market held over 60% of the U.S. grocery market. The Eat Well Without Being Wealthy slogan had become a movement. Then Henry called me into his office. "John, I'm retiring. And I want you to take over." I stared at him. "Me? You understand our mission better than anyone. Sophie's dream is safe with you." The day I became CEO, I told the press. "I'm not here to build an empire. I'm here to carry on a legacy, Sophie Bennett's legacy, that good food should be for everyone." Later, I went to the cemetery with daisies, Sophie's favorite. I laid them on her grave, and on Olivia's and Marcus's. "I did it," I whispered. "Bennett Market is for everyone now, just like you wanted." I kept my promise. The wind carried the scent of fresh bread from a nearby Bennett Market store. I stood there until sunset, knowing that while my family was gone, their dream, and my love for them, would never fade. What would you have done in John's place? Would you walk away from your family, or fight back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. If Sophie's dream inspired you, hit that like button so more people hear this story. And if you want to hear more powerful true life stories, subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next one.